If you're thinking about buying a Royal Enfield right now, hold on, because this is where a lot of riders get it wrong. Some of these bikes look exactly right, until the miles start stacking up. That's when comfort fades, power starts feeling stretched, and small compromises turn into real frustration. And riders who've been through it, they're not debating anymore. They've already moved on. So, instead of wasting time on what doesn't hold up, we're focusing only on the machines that do. 8 motorcycles that actually deliver real comfort, real control, and real confidence when the road gets serious. Stay with this, because a few of these picks might completely change what you thought was the right bike. Number 8. Triumph Scrambler 400X. There's a moment every rider recognizes, usually somewhere just outside town, when the road opens up and the truth shows itself. That is where a lot of smaller, retro-styled machines begin to feel like they are asking permission instead of taking control. Some look the part in the driveway, but once traffic speeds climb and wind starts pushing back, the gap between image and ability becomes impossible to ignore. This is where a different kind of thinking starts to matter. Instead of chasing nostalgia alone, some riders begin looking for something that respects the past without being trapped by it. That means lighter weight that actually works in real-world riding, suspension that can deal with broken pavement, and an engine that feels willing rather than strained. It is not about chasing high numbers. It is about how a machine behaves when conditions are less than perfect. Out on uneven back roads, the difference becomes clear. A well-balanced chassis gives confidence where hesitation used to live. You feel it when the front end tracks cleanly over rough surfaces instead of bouncing wide. You notice it when the bike responds to small inputs without needing correction. That kind of behavior does not come from styling cues. It comes from modern engineering that was built with real use in mind. There is also something to be said about honest expectations. A smaller motorcycle that admits its limits will always feel better than one that pretends to be more than it is. Riders who have spent decades on heavier touring machines understand this better than anyone. They know that control, predictability, and comfort matter more than empty claims. When a bike delivers those things without drama, it earns respect quickly. It also reduces the urge to start fixing things that should have been right from the beginning. Fewer compromises mean fewer upgrades, fewer regrets, and more time actually riding. That alone can make the ownership experience feel cleaner and more satisfying over time. For riders who value simplicity and function, that matters more than polished chrome or familiar silhouettes. What stands out most is how naturally everything comes together. The seating position stays upright, without feeling cramped. The controls fall into place without adjustment. It feels like a machine that was designed to be used, not just admired. And that difference becomes more valuable with every mile. You are looking at a 398 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine putting out around 39.5 horsepower and 27.6 pound-feet of torque. It runs a 320mm front disc with anti-lock braking system, upside-down front forks, and a preload adjustable rear monoshock. Wet weight sits right around 395 pounds, with a seat height just under 33 inches. That level of balance sets a tone that reshapes expectations for what comes next. Number 7. Kawasaki W800. Some motorcycles do not try to impress you right away. They settle in slowly, like an old habit that never really left. You notice it in the way the engine responds without urgency, the way the chassis holds a line without asking for correction, and the way everything feels measured instead of rushed. That kind of presence is not something you find in machines built to chase trends. It comes from a different way of thinking about what a motorcycle should be. Out on a steady stretch of road, that difference becomes clearer. There is no frantic push for attention, no exaggerated response when you roll into the throttle. Instead, the power builds in a way that feels deliberate and controlled. Riders who have spent years on larger touring machines will recognize that feeling immediately. It is not about speed alone. It is about confidence that does not fade when the road stops being predictable. What stands out is how naturally the machine carries itself. The seating position feels open without being loose. The bars sit where they should, not where styling demanded them to be. It encourages longer rides without forcing your body into positions that feel good for 10 minutes and tiring after an hour. That kind of comfort is something experienced riders learn to value more with time. There is also a mechanical honesty here that does not rely on nostalgia as a crutch. The engine character feels authentic, not manufactured to imitate something from the past. It gives you a steady pulse, a sense of connection that reminds you why simpler machines often leave a stronger impression. You are not distracted by unnecessary complexity, you are focused on the ride itself. Another detail that matters is how composed the bike remains when conditions change. Broken pavement, uneven corners, and shifting surfaces do not upset its balance. It stays predictable, and that predictability builds trust mile after mile. Riders who have logged serious distance understand how important that becomes over time. This kind of motorcycle does not demand attention, but it earns respect. It delivers a riding experience that feels grounded and complete, without leaning on appearance alone. That is what separates it from machines that only look the part. This one carries a 773 cubic centimeter air-cooled parallel twin, making about 47 horsepower and 46.4 pound-feet of torque. You get a single front disc with anti-lock braking system, traditional telescopic forks up front, and twin rear shocks with preload adjustment. Wet weight lands just under 500 pounds, and the seat height stays low at roughly 31 inches. A deeper layer of character begins to emerge when the engine itself becomes the conversation. If this breakdown is already helping you see through the hype, take a second to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And share your experience below, because real rider input is what keeps this conversation honest. Number 6. Moto Guzzi V7. Some machines speak in a language you do not hear anymore. It is not loud, not aggressive, not trying to prove anything in the first 5 minutes. It shows itself slowly, through the way the engine settles into a rhythm, and the way the whole bike feels like it has been doing this long before trends started telling it how to look. That kind of presence does not come from styling alone. It comes from a mechanical identity that has not been diluted. Out on a long stretch of road, that identity becomes clear. The engine does not rush, but it never feels like it is falling behind either. There is a steady pull that builds confidence instead of tension. Riders who have spent years on big touring machines will recognize that feeling right away. It is not about chasing speed. It is about knowing the bike will carry you without complaint, mile after mile. There is also something different in how the power is delivered. It does not feel distant or filtered. You feel the movement, the pulse, and the connection in a way that reminds you why older machines left such a strong impression. That connection builds trust, and trust is what keeps a rider relaxed when the road gets longer than expected. The layout plays a role in that experience as well. The seating position stays neutral, letting your body settle naturally, without forcing you into an unnatural reach. The controls feel deliberate, not overly light, not overly heavy. Everything falls into place in a way that makes the ride feel intuitive instead of rehearsed. Another detail that stands out is the way the bike handles real-world imperfections. Uneven pavement does not throw it off balance. The suspension absorbs what it needs to without turning the ride into a correction exercise. That predictability matters more with time, especially for riders who care about comfort over long distances rather than short bursts of excitement. There is also a quiet sense of durability here. It feels like a machine that was built to last, not just to sell. That impression matters to riders who have seen enough motorcycles come and go to know the difference between something temporary and something that earns a place in the garage. Here you have an 853 cubic centimeter air-cooled transverse V-twin, producing about 67 horsepower and 58.3 pound-feet of torque. Braking is handled by a single front disc with anti-lock braking system paired with telescopic forks and twin rear shocks. Wet weight comes in just under 493 pounds, with a seat height right around 30.7 inches. That kind of mechanical character sets up a different kind of expectation for what comes ahead. Before we get into the next bike, there's a reason some riders feel more comfortable and in control than others, even on the same machine. Check the description for the gear and accessories that actually make a difference once the miles start adding up. Number 5. Harley-Davidson Nightster. There comes a point where appearance alone stops carrying the weight. A bike can look right, sit low, and carry a badge that means something. But once the road stretches out and traffic starts moving with purpose, it has to deliver more than presence. That is where many mid-weight cruisers fall short, especially for riders who expect more than just a relaxed ride around town. What changes here is not just the engine, but the intent behind it. Instead of leaning entirely on heritage, this machine brings in a more modern approach to how power is delivered. The difference shows up the moment you roll into the throttle. It does not hesitate, it does not feel strained, and it does not ask you to plan every move seconds in advance. It responds with a level of urgency that older riders recognize as necessary, not optional. Out on open highway, that becomes even more important. Holding speed feels natural instead of forced. Passing does not require a long setup or perfect timing. There is enough reserve to deal with real traffic conditions, which is something many lighter cruisers simply cannot offer. That alone changes how confident a rider feels when the road opens up and the pace increases. The seating position also plays its role. Low and approachable, but not so cramped that it limits control. The bars sit where they should, allowing a relaxed reach without pulling the shoulders forward. It feels like a cruiser that was designed to move, not just to sit and idle. Riders who have spent years on larger touring machines will notice that balance immediately. There is also a sense of purpose in the way everything works together. The chassis feels stable, the braking system responds with clarity, and the overall weight stays manageable, without feeling light or insubstantial. It carries itself like a motorcycle that understands its role, and that role is not just about looking the part. What stands out most is how it avoids the usual compromises. It does not force you to choose between style and performance. It does not rely on nostalgia to excuse weak output. Instead, it delivers a combination that feels current without losing the identity that draws riders to it in the first place. This runs a 975 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled Revolution Max V-twin, putting out about 91 horsepower and 72 pound-feet of torque. Up front is a single disc with anti-lock braking system, while the rear uses a hidden monoshock instead of traditional twin shocks. Wet weight is just under 487 pounds, and the seat height sits low at about 27 inches. That balance of modern performance and familiar presence sets the stage for a different kind of refinement ahead. Number 4. Triumph Speed. Twin. 900. There is a kind of motorcycle that does not try to prove itself in the first mile. It settles into the ride, lets the road come to it, and builds confidence without asking for attention. Riders who have spent years on heavier machines recognize that feeling immediately. It is not about being the fastest or the loudest. It is about how everything works together when the ride stretches longer than expected. That balance becomes clear the moment the road starts to curve. The bike responds without hesitation, leaning in naturally and holding its line without correction. There is no sense of fighting the chassis or compensating for weak suspension. It feels composed, and that composure makes every mile easier to enjoy. For riders who value control over flash, that difference matters more than any styling detail. The engine plays a quiet but important role in that experience. Power comes in smoothly, not with a sudden surge, but with a steady pull that matches the rhythm of real riding. It does not demand constant shifting or aggressive input. Instead, it allows you to settle into a pace and stay there comfortably. That kind of delivery is what keeps longer rides from becoming tiring. There is also a refinement here that shows up in smaller details. Throttle response feels measured, braking feels predictable, and the overall weight stays manageable without feeling light or fragile. It gives the impression of a machine that was designed with intention rather than compromise. That matters to riders who have seen what happens when design takes priority over function. The seating position adds to that sense of control. Upright, natural, and supportive, it keeps strain off the lower back and shoulders. That alone can make a noticeable difference over distance. Riders who have put serious miles behind them know that comfort is not a luxury. It is what determines whether a ride stays enjoyable or becomes something you push through. Another advantage is how well everything holds together when conditions are less than ideal. Uneven pavement, changing surfaces, and long stretches of highway do not upset the bike's balance. It remains steady, predictable, and easy to manage. That kind of consistency builds trust over time, and trust is what keeps a rider coming back. Over time, that reliability becomes something you count on without thinking, making every ride feel more controlled and far less tiring. You are getting a 900 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin, delivering roughly 64 horsepower and 59 pound-feet of torque. It uses a single front disc with anti-lock braking system, conventional telescopic forks, and twin rear shocks with preload adjustment. Wet weight is right around 476 pounds, and the seat height is just over 30 inches. If you value this kind of straight, no-nonsense breakdown, make sure you're subscribed. There's more coming that cuts through marketing and gets into what actually matters when you're choosing a motorcycle you'll live with for years ahead. Number 3. Triumph Scrambler 900. Not every ride stays clean and predictable. Roads break apart, pavement fades into patchwork, and sometimes the path ahead stops looking like something designed for comfort. That is where certain motorcycles begin to feel out of place. They may look capable, but once conditions change, the limits show quickly. Riders who have spent years covering distance know that a machine either adapts or it starts to feel like a liability. This is where a different kind of design earns its place. Instead of focusing only on smooth asphalt, it carries a setup that expects variation. The stance feels ready without being tall or awkward. You sit in a position that gives control, not just visibility. That balance makes it easier to handle whatever the road turns into, whether it stays clean or starts to break down. Out on uneven surfaces, the difference becomes clear. The suspension absorbs what it should without throwing the rider offline. The front end stays planted, and the rear follows without hesitation. That kind of control builds confidence quickly. Riders who have dealt with unpredictable roads understand how valuable that becomes when fatigue starts to set in. The engine plays its part as well. Power comes in low and steady, giving enough pull to handle climbs, loose surfaces, and changing speeds without constant adjustment. It does not feel strained or delayed. Instead, it feels like it is working with you rather than against you. That cooperation is what turns a difficult ride into something manageable. Comfort also carries through in the overall layout. The seating position remains upright and supportive, allowing longer rides without unnecessary strain. The bars sit naturally, and the foot placement keeps the rider balanced instead of folded. These details may seem small at first, but they define how a bike feels after several hours on the road. Another advantage is how well it holds composure when the pace changes. Whether slowing down for rough sections or picking up speed on open stretches, the bike stays predictable. That consistency removes the need for constant correction, allowing the rider to focus on the road ahead instead of the machine beneath him. Over longer rides, that steadiness reduces fatigue and keeps the experience controlled. even when conditions shift and demand steady input from the rider. You are getting a 900 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin delivering roughly 64 horsepower and 59 pound-feet of torque. It uses a single front disc with anti-lock braking system, conventional telescopic forks, and twin rear shocks with preload adjustment. Wet weight is right around 476 pounds, and the seat height is just over 30 inches. Versatility like this begins to shift expectations towards something more practical and accessible. Number 2. Kawasaki Eliminator. Some motorcycles solve problems so quietly that most riders do not notice until they have already spent money elsewhere. It happens when a bike looks right on the showroom floor, but starts to feel like work once real miles begin to add up. Weight becomes noticeable, power feels limited, and comfort starts fading sooner than expected. That is where a more practical approach begins to stand out. This machine does not try to impress with size or presence alone. Instead, it focuses on balance. The weight stays manageable, the seating position feels natural, and the controls respond without delay. That combination makes it easier to ride in situations that would otherwise become tiring. Riders who have spent years handling larger touring bikes will recognize the advantage immediately. Out on the road, the difference becomes even clearer. The engine delivers power in a way that feels usable, not overwhelming, and not lacking. It pulls cleanly when needed, allowing the rider to maintain pace without constantly planning ahead. That sense of control reduces stress, especially when traffic conditions change or when longer distances begin to wear on the body. There is also a level of simplicity here that works in its favor. The bike does not rely on unnecessary features to justify itself. Everything feels straightforward, from the throttle response to the braking feel. That kind of direct connection allows the rider to focus on the road instead of adjusting to the machine. Over time, that becomes more valuable than any added complexity. Comfort plays a larger role than it might appear at first. The low seat height makes it approachable, while the overall layout keeps the rider in a stable position. There is no awkward reach, no forced posture, and no need to shift constantly to stay comfortable. For riders who care about longer, relaxed rides, that detail matters more than styling. Another advantage shows up in everyday use. Parking, maneuvering at low speeds, and handling tight spaces all feel easier compared to heavier cruisers. That practicality makes the bike more usable on a regular basis, not just for occasional rides. It becomes something you can rely on, rather than something you have to plan around. Over time, that ease turns into confidence, allowing the rider to focus less on effort and more on enjoying the ride itself. Underneath is a 451 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin, producing about 45 horsepower and 31.7 pound-feet of torque. It runs a single front disc with anti-lock braking system, telescopic forks, and twin rear shocks. Wet weight is right around 386 pounds, and the seat height stays approachable at just under 29 inches. That kind of straightforward capability points directly toward the most complete option still ahead. Number 1. Kawasaki Vulcan S. There is a point where most riders start to see things differently. It usually comes after years on heavier machines, long rides that test your back and shoulders, and enough experience to know what actually matters once the excitement fades. That is where the idea of a motorcycle changes from something impressive to something dependable. It is no longer about size or reputation alone. It is about how the bike fits your life. This is where a well-balanced machine begins to stand out. Instead of overwhelming weight or underwhelming power, it lands in the middle with purpose. The riding position feels natural from the moment you sit down. The controls do not require adjustment. Everything feels like it was designed to work together rather than compete for attention. That kind of balance is not easy to find, and it becomes more valuable with every mile. Out on the highway, the difference becomes clear. The engine responds without hesitation, delivering power in a way that feels steady and predictable. It holds speed without strain and allows for confident passing when needed. Riders who have dealt with machines that struggle at higher speeds will recognize how important that is. It removes the constant need to plan ahead and replaces it with a sense of control. Comfort is another factor that becomes more noticeable over time. The seat height allows for easy footing, while the overall layout keeps the rider in a relaxed position. There is no awkward reach to the bars, no cramped leg position, and no constant shifting to stay comfortable. That kind of design makes longer rides feel manageable instead of exhausting. Handling also plays its part. The bike feels stable without being heavy, responsive without being nervous. Low-speed maneuvering is easy, and tight spaces do not become a challenge. For riders who still want to enjoy everyday riding without dealing with unnecessary bulk, that practicality makes a real difference. What stands out most is how complete the experience feels. It does not rely on nostalgia or oversized presence to justify itself. It delivers what matters in a straightforward way, giving riders confidence, comfort, and capability without forcing compromise. That is what makes it the strongest option in this group. Over time, that kind of honesty becomes more valuable than styling alone because it continues to deliver without asking the rider to adjust expectations or overlook its limitations. This uses a 649 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin, putting out about 61 horsepower and 46.3 pound-feet of torque. Braking is a single front disc with anti-lock braking system, paired with telescopic forks and a preload adjustable rear shock. Wet weight sits at roughly 498 pounds, and the seat height is low at about 27.8 inches. At the end of the day, the right motorcycle is the one that still feels right miles later. Not just the one that looked good at the start. The difference shows up in comfort, control, and how much you actually enjoy the ride over time. If this helped you see things a little clearer, hit like and subscribe for more straight, no-nonsense breakdowns like this. And I want to hear from you, what bike surprised you the most, or what would you pick instead?